What if I told you the only thing standing between the man you are and the man you could become is the way you respond to discomfort? Think about that for a moment. Every day you're faced with choices, easy paths that lead nowhere and difficult ones that build you into something dangerous, capable, and respected. Real men choose the difficult path. They choose the path that demands something from them. Because a man who demands nothing from himself becomes nothing. Every time you wake up, life is quietly asking you a question. Are you serious or not? Most people answer with excuses. A real man answers with action. A real man knows that discipline is not punishment. It's power. It's the invisible engine that separates the strong from the soft. You don't rise because you feel motivated. You rise because you refuse to be owned by your own weakness. The world respects results, not complaints. You think the great men in history, the ones we read about in books like The Power of Habit or Think and Grow Rich, reached greatness because life was gentle with them? No. They were forged in pressure. They understood what most men ignore. Hardship is not the enemy. Hardship is the forging fire. It reveals who you are and what you're made of. Real men don't panic when life gets heavy. They don't crumble when plans fall apart. They adjust. They adapt. They build again. And when emotions rise like a storm, they don't drown in them. They navigate. A man who cannot control himself will never control anything around him, but a man who masters his mind becomes unstoppable. Your purpose is not something you stumble upon. It's something you build piece by piece, day by day, through the small choices. Wake up earlier than you want. Push harder than you want. Stay focused when your mind screams to quit. Your habits are building you or breaking you every single day. Most men dream of strength, wealth, success, respect. Real men create the habits that make those dreams inevitable. And here's the brutal truth. You already know what you need to do. You already know which habits are rotting your potential. You already know the people, the distractions, the patterns that keep you average. You're not confused. You're comfortable. And comfort is the death of progress. So choose the harder path. Choose responsibility. Choose discipline. Choose the version of yourself that scares you because he demands more. Let the world feel your presence, not your excuses. Because real men don't wait for opportunities. They build themselves until opportunities chase them. This is what real men do. They rise, they fight, they endure, and they evolve. And if you make that decision today, right now, you will wake up one day and realize you became the type of man others look at and say, he's different. He's relentless. He's built. Responsibility is the dividing line between men who rise and men who remain trapped in the same cycles for years. When a man chooses responsibility, he chooses to take ownership of his actions, his failures, his habits, and his destiny. Most people spend their entire lives pointing fingers at circumstances, at their past, at their lack of opportunity, never realizing that the moment you blame something outside yourself, you give that very thing power over your life. Real men understand this deeply. They know that excuses feel good in the moment, but destroy you in the long run. Responsibility is heavier, but it builds muscle, mental, emotional, and spiritual. When you take responsibility, you silence the voice that always tries to negotiate your potential down to something comfortable. You stop waiting for perfect timing, perfect resources, perfect motivation. You begin using whatever you have right where you are because you understand that progress only begins when excuses end. A man who chooses responsibility wakes up knowing that no one is coming to save him. He understands that no mentor, no friend, no partner can fight his battles for him. They can support him, but the weight still rests on his own shoulders. Real men don't run from that weight. They want it. They understand that the weight is what transforms them. They know that the greatest version of themselves is hiding behind the tasks they've been avoiding, the conversations they don't want to have, the risk they are afraid to take. And the moment a man chooses responsibility, he becomes dangerous, not because he harms others, but because he becomes immune to excuses, distractions, and the weakness that paralyzes average men. Responsibility teaches discipline. When you know that every outcome in your life is tied to your choices, You automatically begin making stronger choices. You think twice before wasting time because you understand that time wasted is potential murdered. You think twice before blaming life because you know blame is the language of men who gave up on themselves. Responsibility forces you to elevate your standards. You stop tolerating laziness in your actions, softness in your mindset, and inconsistency in your habits. You look at yourself with brutal honesty because you know that pretending you were doing enough is the quickest way to stay exactly where you are. Excuses, on the other hand, create a comfortable prison. They sound reasonable. They sound justified, but they quietly drain your drive, your hunger, your ambition. Every time you say, I can't, I'm too tired, it's not the right time, you reinforce a weaker identity. You teach yourself that you're not capable when in reality, you've simply chosen not to be. Excuses are seductive because they remove pressure, but pressure is exactly what forges greatness. Without pressure, nothing grows. Without pressure, no man evolves. Responsibility takes courage. It forces you to admit where you've fallen short, where you've been lazy, where you've allowed fear to make decisions for you. But that honesty is the first step to power. Once you claim responsibility, you reclaim control. You begin shaping your life instead of being shaped by circumstances. You stop reacting and start building. You stop submitting to your weaknesses and start dominating them. A man who chooses responsibility becomes the kind of man who earns respect without asking for it, simply because he carries himself with the weight that others avoid, and he keeps moving forward no matter how heavy it feels. Discipline and self-control are the backbone of every man who builds a life worth respecting. Without discipline, talent becomes useless, dreams become fantasies, and potential becomes nothing more than a story you tell yourself to feel better. Real men understand that discipline is not something you turn on when you feel like it. It's a lifestyle, a daily choice, a commitment to doing the work even when every part of you craves comfort. Discipline is the quiet force that pushes you out of bed when your mind whispers that you've earned more rest. It's the voice that tells you to keep going when no one is watching, when no one will praise, when no one will even know you tried. A man with discipline becomes dangerous because he no longer relies on motivation, which is temporary, emotional, and unpredictable. He relies on a system he built himself. Discipline begins with self-control. If you cannot control your impulses, your habits, your emotions, or your reactions, then the world will control them for you. You will be a slave to distraction, a slave to pleasure, a slave to weakness disguised as taking it easy. Self-control is the ability to say no when everything inside you screams yes. It's the ability to pull yourself away from comfort, from laziness, from temptation, because you know those moments are traps designed to steal your potential. Every time you resist something that weakens you, you strengthen the part of you that wants more out of life. Every time you give in, you teach yourself that your short-term feelings matter more than your long-term success. A disciplined man understands that he is fighting a constant war against his lower self. There's a version of you that wants to improve, build, achieve, create, and dominate your goals. And there's a version of you that wants to stay comfortable, indulge, avoid effort, and delay the work until tomorrow. Discipline is choosing the higher version of yourself over and over again until it becomes automatic. It's staying focused when others are distracted, executing when others procrastinate, and doing the hard things even when you have every excuse not to. When you develop discipline, your life begins to change in ways that feel almost unfair. While others struggle to stay consistent, you become consistent by default. While others chase motivation, you generate progress through routine. While others let emotions dictate their actions, you let your principles dictate yours. People will wonder how you got ahead, how you transformed, how you elevated so quickly, but they never see the small sacrifices you made daily, the nights you worked while others slept, the temptations you walked away from, or the comfort you denied yourself because you wanted something greater than temporary pleasure. Discipline builds confidence. It builds identity. It builds a man who trusts himself because he has proof from every workout he completed when he didn't want to, every distraction he rejected, every goal he chased with relentless consistency. Discipline is the ultimate form of self-respect because it shows you refuse to live below your potential. A man without discipline is controlled by life, but a man with discipline controls his life. Hardship is the greatest advantage a man can have, though most people spend their lives running from it. They treat discomfort like a curse, something to avoid, something to escape, never realizing that every moment of struggle is a moment of transformation. Hardship forces you to confront who you really are, your strength, your weakness, your fears, your resilience. It exposes the parts of you that are soft, untrained, untested, and that exposure is a gift because until you see your weaknesses clearly, you can't eliminate them. Until life pushes you to the edge, you don't learn how far you can truly go. A man who avoids difficulty avoids growth, but a man who embraces hardship becomes forged, sharper, harder, more focused, more capable, more dangerous. When you face hardship, your excuses die, your illusions die. The stories you've been telling yourself about why you can't improve, why you can build, why you can't rise, they all collapse the moment life puts pressure on you. Because pressure doesn't lie. Pressure doesn't care about your feelings. Pressure reveals the truth. And the truth is simple. Every man has far more strength inside him than he realizes, but you will never access that strength in comfort. Comfort breeds softness. Hardship breeds competence. And competence is what separates men who achieve from men who remain stuck. Think about every great person you've ever admired. Their life wasn't easy. They weren't handed success. They weren't surrounded by perfect circumstances. They were shaped by the exact thing most men avoid: struggle. Hardship taught them discipline when motivation died. Hardship taught them patience when life moved slower than they wanted. Hardship taught them humility when they failed. Hardship taught them perseverance when quitting would have been easier. Every valuable trait in a man is born from challenge, never comfort. Most people want growth without pain, progress without sacrifice, achievement without pressure, but that desire is impossible. You cannot build strength without resistance. You cannot build character without difficulty. You cannot build a powerful life while avoiding the very experiences that would make you powerful. When life becomes hard, most men retreat. They look for distractions, escapes, excuses, anything that shields them from the discomfort. But real men lean in. They understand that every difficult moment is training. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Every setback is sharpening their blade. Hardship gives you an edge because it teaches you what average men never learn, that suffering is not the enemy, it is the path. When you endure something painful and refuse to break, your confidence grows. Your threshold expands. The things that once overwhelmed you start to feel small. The problems that used to crush you become manageable. You begin to walk differently, think differently, act differently because you've proven to yourself that you can take hits and keep moving. Hardship makes you unshakable, and that kind of man becomes rare. The men who achieve greatness are not the ones who had the easiest life. They're the ones who refused to run from difficulty. They saw hardship as the fire that would forge them into someone they weren't yet, but were capable of becoming. Emotions are powerful guides, but they were never meant to be your masters. A man who lets his emotions control him becomes unpredictable, unstable, and easily defeated. But a man who learns to understand his emotions without letting them dictate his actions becomes unstoppable. Most people misunderstand emotional strength. They think it means feeling nothing, suppressing everything, pretending to be made of stone. But that's not strength, that's denial. Real strength is the ability to feel deeply, yet act with clarity. It's the ability to experience anger without becoming reckless, to experience fear without becoming paralyzed, to experience sadness without collapsing into self-pity. Emotions are signals, not commands. They're meant to inform you, not rule you. A man who is controlled by emotion lives a life driven by impulse. One bad day can destroy his discipline. One argument can derail his entire plan. One moment of doubt can make him quit everything he's been building. That kind of man is dangerous, not to others, but to himself, because he becomes a slave to every passing feeling. His life becomes a roller coaster of instability, frustration, and regret. But the man who controls his emotions becomes consistent. When you master your emotions, you no longer fall apart when things get hard. You adapt. You hold your ground. You move forward even when your mind is screaming to stop. Emotional control is not about rejecting your feelings. It's about mastering your reactions. It's about confronting tough moments with logic instead of panic. Think of all the times you've made decisions you later regretted. Were they logical or were they emotional? Anger makes you act too fast. Fear makes you act too slowly. Frustration makes you abandon the work. Impatience makes you settle for less. But when you slow down, breathe, think, and respond with intention, you become the kind of man who is difficult to shake. That level of control changes everything. Your relationships, your career, your habits, your sense of peace. The men who excel in life are not those who feel the least. They are those who regulate the most. They understand that emotions come in waves. If you act during the wave, you drown. If you wait for it to pass, you move with precision. Every time you resist an emotional impulse, you strengthen mental discipline. Every time you pause before reacting, you sharpen your judgment. Every time you act based on principle rather than mood, you build a reputation of reliability and maturity. People trust a man who doesn't lose control. People respect a man who stays calm under pressure. People look up to the man whose emotions don't shake his foundation. Mastery of emotion also creates freedom. If you are controlled by feelings, people can manipulate you. Circumstances can break you. Stress can overwhelm you. But when you are the one steering the ship, external chaos can't pull you off your path. You become centered, grounded, and prepared for anything. And when a man reaches that level of control, his actions become intentional, his decisions become sharper, and his progress becomes consistent. He becomes the kind of man who moves with purpose instead of reacting to the noise around him. Purpose is the engine that drives a man forward, even when everything around him feels heavy, chaotic, or uncertain. A man without purpose drifts through life, waking up each day with no real direction, no real mission, no real fire pushing him to become better. He becomes a passenger instead of a driver, reacting instead of building, surviving instead of advancing. But when a man finds a purpose, when he decides what he stands for, what he wants to create, who he wants to become, his entire existence shifts. He wakes up differently. He moves differently. He thinks differently. Suddenly, his actions have weight. His time has value. His decisions have intention. Purpose gives a man meaning. Meaning gives a man strength. And strength gives a man identity. Purpose doesn't always arrive like a lightning strike. Sometimes it begins as a small pull, a quiet dissatisfaction, a feeling that you're meant for more than the life you're living. Most men ignore that feeling because pursuing purpose requires sacrifice. It requires giving up comfort, pleasure, and distraction. But real men pursue it anyway. They understand that a man without purpose will eventually be consumed by things that don't matter. Short-term, entertainment, meaningless habits, empty routines. A man with purpose becomes immune to those traps. His goals are louder than his temptations. His mission is stronger than his excuses. He sees the bigger picture and refuses to sabotage it for short-lived enjoyment. Chasing purpose forces you to evolve. You cannot stay weak and accomplish something meaningful. You cannot stay undisciplined and build something lasting. Purpose demands a higher version of you, and that demand becomes your fuel. Every setback becomes a lesson. Every failure becomes data. Every challenge becomes a test. Purpose transforms obstacles into growth. It turns frustration into focus. It turns pressure into progress. While most men crumble under difficulty, a man with purpose grows sharper because he knows the struggle is connected to something bigger than the moment. Purpose also simplifies your life. It removes unnecessary noise. When you know what you're aiming for, you instantly know what to avoid. You know which events to skip, which habits to eliminate, which people to distance yourself from, which opportunities to decline. You stop drifting into environments that weaken you because you have something that strengthens you. You stop wasting hours on meaningless activities because your mission demands your attention. Purpose gives your life direction, and direction gives your life power. A man with purpose carries himself differently. He is not easily shaken, easily distracted, or easily influenced. His focus intimidates people. His discipline surprises people. His consistency separates him from the crowd. While others look for entertainment, he looks for improvement. While others crave comfort, he craves results. While others wander, he builds. And the more he builds, the clearer his purpose becomes. Purpose creates resilience. When you know why you're moving forward, you can push through anything. Fatigue, doubt, failure, setbacks, uncertainty. Purpose gives pain a meaning. It gives effort a reason. It gives sacrifice a reward. A man without purpose collapses when life becomes heavy, but a man with purpose becomes unstoppable. Your habits are the blueprint of your destiny. A man can have ambition, dreams, talent, even intelligence, but without the right habits, none of it matters. Habits are the silent architects of your future. They shape your identity, your mindset, your discipline, your success, and even the way you see yourself. Most men think their dreams define them, but it's their daily actions that tell the truth. You don't become strong by wishing for strength. You don't become successful by imagining success. You don't become disciplined by promising yourself you'll start tomorrow. You become all of these things through small, consistent habits. Habits repeated so often, they become part of who you are. A man's life doesn't change in one dramatic moment. It changes quietly in the small decisions he makes when no one is watching. Waking up on time is a habit. Training when you're tired is a habit. Controlling your emotions is a habit. Staying focused while others are distracted is a habit. Finishing what you start is a habit. And every one of these habits, whether small or simple, compounds over time. A man with strong habits doesn't need constant motivation. His habits do the heavy lifting. He doesn't rely on willpower because his routines have turned discipline into something automatic. Meanwhile, a man with weak habits is constantly fighting himself. He wants to do better, but has trained his mind to choose comfort. He desires success, but has conditioned himself to settle. He dreams big, but acts small. Habits create identity. When you perform something every day, you begin to think of yourself as the type of man who does it. If you train daily, you become a man who values strength. If you read daily, you become a man who values knowledge. If you work relentlessly, you become a man who values progress. Identity built through action is unshakable. But this works both ways. If you procrastinate daily, you become a man who avoids responsibility. If you indulge daily, you become a man who hunts for pleasure instead of purpose. If you quit easily, you become a man who reinforces weakness instead of eliminating it. Your habits are either building you or destroying you. There is no middle ground. Most men underestimate how small habits shape massive outcomes. Missing one workout doesn't seem like a big deal. Sleeping in once doesn't feel disastrous. Wasting an hour scrolling doesn't feel harmful. But every one of those moments is a vote for the weaker version of yourself. One vote becomes 2, 2 becomes 10, and suddenly your potential is shrinking while your excuses grow stronger. On the other hand, choosing discipline once makes it easier to choose it again. One solid decision leads to another. Progress compounds just like failure. Over time, your habits carve your path. They become the invisible formula behind your success. Great men aren't built from luck. They are built from consistency. They choose habits that align with the life they want, not the mood they're in. They understand that habits create momentum, and momentum creates transformation. When your habits support your goals, progress becomes inevitable. You don't rise through emotion. You rise through repetition. A man is only as strong as the choices he makes daily, and those choices, repeated long enough, form the life he eventually lives. In the end, everything you want to become, everything you want to build, comes down to one simple truth. Greatness is not an accident. It's a decision. A decision to take responsibility when others run from it. A decision to stay disciplined when comfort tempts you. A decision to embrace hardship instead of avoiding it. A decision to control your emotions instead of being controlled by them. A decision to live with purpose even when the path is lonely. and a decision to build the habits that shape you into the man you know you're capable of being. No one will hand you strength, respect, success, or power. You earn them through relentless consistency. Every choice you make is either moving you closer to the man you want to be or further away. Choose the path that demands more. Choose the path that builds you. And keep moving forward until your actions make your future undeniable